Hi,
Hey.
this is Margaret Mayhew, and Herb is manning the camera over here. And the picture you see is Wyatt and Mary McIntosh. And Mary is going to tell us a little bit about her life, where she was born, her name, and about her growing up years, her mother and her dad and her family, and then her marriage to Wyatt and the work that she does. And she's going to do this for her son Rhett and his wife and children, and I know they're going to really love it. And we're enjoying being here and being able to do this for them. So Mary, take it away and just tell them all about yourself.
We don't have but a few hours. But she had said something about doing this story of my life, and that she had done her sister-in-law and brother's life like this. And she wanted me to tell something about my life and how it started and where it has come from. And I was born in Glass, Tennessee in 1927, the 23rd of December. I was really a Christmas present. They really got one this time. But my father was a crippled man, and we never did have much money when he was living, and we had even less after he died. So he died when I was 9 years old, and my mother had to wash to make a living, or an existence, really is all it was. But I had to start working, I guess, when I was about 4 or 5 years old, picking strawberries and cleaning people's yards and babysitting, and I guess I was just born to work, and I really, because I had to, it was just a way of life, and I really loved to work. But as time went on, to begin with, I had a polio when I was 3 weeks old, and I had a very bad eye. It was turned all the way to the back, and all you could see was just the white eyeball. And children can be so cruel, and I suffered a lot of heartache from that. But when I was 16 years old, the welfare department took me and sent me to Memphis to have that eye worked on, and they took the eye out and did a muscle and a leader in it, and the next year I was a strawberry queen at Humboldt, and I guess...
Go ahead. I was just going to ask you some questions when I raised my hand.
Okay.
You're a strawberry queen.
Yeah, I was strawberry queen in Humboldt, and I guess that really started to turn my life around, to give it more of an upbeat. That I had always been so introverted before that, but I guess that's when my life really changed.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had a brother to die when he was 16 years old. His name was Guy Bernard, and then I had an older sister, Grace, and she was quite a bit older than I was, and I had a sister that was 5 years older, that was Margaret, and James Deason was my brother, and he was 2 years older than I am. I'm the baby, and I'm the only one left.
What was your last name, Mary?
I was an Everett. I was
Mary?
Sadie Everett, and B. Everett's youngest daughter. And
your middle name was what?
Opal. Hated that name.
But did you get to finish high school?
No, my mother was not very well. Well, she worked so hard, she just wore herself out, I guess. So I had to quit work in the 11th grade and go to work at the factory there in O'Brien at 65 cents an hour to support my mother and me, or else I guess we would have starved to death because there was no one around to help. And
you were talking about doing laundry a while ago. How did you have...
Oh, my mother had to wash for a living, and I had to help her, and we'd go around and gather up fence posts to build a fire under the kettle to heat the water. And we had a well that didn't even have a pulley, so we had a piece of tin over that hole in the ground that was the well, and I always had a horror of walking off into that thing. But we would pull the water up out of that well, and it was so hard we had to break it with a lie. Of course, no one would ever, growing up now, would know anything at all about anything like that. But anyhow, she washed every day of her life, I guess, as far back as I can remember. Sometimes for a quarter a washing. And I have seen her wash most of the day for a pound of butter and a quart of milk.
We were talking, and because there was a glare on the picture, well, we had to stop for a minute, and I'm not real sure that what Mary said at the last came through. So Mary was talking about what her mother would receive sometimes for doing the laundry. So go ahead and repeat that, Mary.
Well, as I had said, she's worked a lot of days just for bread, butter, and milk to hold our body and soul together. She always had a garden, but you know, she had to work every day, so we had a pretty poor existence. But
when you mentioned your mother's attitude and things that she said to you that gave you a positive attitude in life, what was her personality like?
it was wonderful. It was just wonderful. That's the one thing that she did leave me. She never had money or possessions to leave me, but she left me a heritage that I wouldn't take anything for.
What would she say in the mornings when
she would come in to wake me up. She'd say, hop up, hop up. The sun's shining and the birds are singing everywhere. And it just made you just want to jump out of the bed and go to it, whatever it was.
And she might be working her fingers to the bone that very day.
That's right. But she always had something positive to say and do. And she really was, she was a great influence in my life.
Well, after you got your eye fixed and you didn't go back to school, you didn't finish high school, did you?
No, I had, had quit and had gone to work at the factory, and then that was when they had sent me to Memphis.
Yeah.
But then after that, I married in December the 26th, 1947.
Well, before you married, though, did you have a lot of boyfriends?
Oh yeah, we had a slew of them. Lots of boyfriends.
When did you work at Kroger's? You told me.
Oh, this was long after.
Oh, okay. Okay. How'd you meet Wyatt?
Well, we had gone to a Bisbee show, a bunch of girls, and were sitting there, and this man was sitting behind us, and I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to him. He was just a man sitting back there. But later on, after we had met through some mutual friends, he said, do you remember the night I sat behind you at Bisbee's show? And I said, no, well, not really. I knew there's someone sitting back there. He said, well, I said to myself, I'm going to marry that girl.
Did he really?
Uh-huh. Yeah, he was smitten, I think, right then. I thought, you know, that was the least thing in the world that I was interested in right then, was getting married. But he won me over, and we've had a lot of good times together. And, of course, now that he's gone, I realize how good they were.
Well, when you won the Strawberry Festival, how old were you then? After you had your eye fixed and you were Strawberry
That was
Queen?
in '46.
In just the year before had you already met White at that time? But you met him then after you. Well, I think you told me one time the doctor was so proud of you that he had your picture on his desk.
Yeah, because he had a daughter my age is the reason. He was the only doctor that would touch it because it was a very delicate operation.
Yeah.
And because he had a daughter my age, it made him want to, you know, do his best, and he did, and I loved him dearly. He died with cancer.
Well, where did you first live? And Mother McIntosh was a sweet lady. I knew her.
Yeah, well, we had to live in the house with them for about 18 months because we had thought, you know, we might buy a farm and build a house or something would come along. But there was nothing available, so we lived there for about 18 months, and then we decided we just wanted to be out to ourselves so bad. There was a little tenant house up in the field, and one day she said something about, Ms. Mack suggested that we move that little house down here and maybe build onto it a little bit until we could find something, you know, that we could afford and wanted. And that's how this little house started, with one room and a side room. We pulled it down here with a school bus and built one room on. That was what is now the living room and dining room. And that's all we could do. And Mr. Mack then willed us this 1 acre of ground. And through the years, I've always, I guess, had a burning desire to have better than what I had, which now I realize was a blessing, or I might not have striven so hard and worked so hard to attain that. But when, well, also, you know, we just kept working at it, and I know one time I wanted a den so bad because we were using our bedroom for a den and a bedroom too. So White said, well, we just can't afford a den. So when he went to the National Guard camp one summer, I was working at the beauty shop making $11 a day, And I started that den while he was gone.
But
So
you mean you started it yourself
Well,
physically?
No, not
mean,
physically, just I
Okay.
had a carpenter to start it.
Yeah.
And I thought it might be better to ask forgiveness than permission, so that's the way the den came. And then when our first little grandson came along, we knew we was going to have more room, so we pushed that wall out and went back and made the bigger den and
You
the
mean
deck.
when your son, not grandson? You mean when Rhett came along? Oh, okay.
No, when Justin came along.
Well, now, wait a minute, back up. When I met you in 1960, you had the bed, you had the living room, and your bedroom, and that other bedroom,
Well,
and
that's
the
when,
bath,
yeah, we had to, when
and then
my
this,
mother lived
the kitchen.
with us.
Okay, you had that,
Mhm.
and then after we had met, you added a small den,
Mhm.
and you had a room for Rhett.
It was really a closet, but
Yeah.
everything was built in. His bed was built into the wall, and his toy chest, and his desk, and everything was built in. It was just a closet,
Yeah.
a walk-in closet.
I guess we kind of got ahead of ourselves here because we didn't even mention what year Rhett was born.
He was, well, we wanted a child so bad, and the doctor had told me that I could never have one, that I had an infantile uterus and we could never do it. So we were adopting a little boy, and about 3 weeks before we were supposed to have gotten the little 6-month-old boy, they found out that ours was on the way. And I was working at Kroger's, and I took the rabbit test, and when they called me and told me that it was positive, I threw the telephone just as far as I could send it, and they could have heard me screaming from the front to the back. And
Your mother had lived with you some before that, you said, and you said maybe it was just a blessing that you really didn't
because
get
I
pregnant.
guess God knew that I couldn't take care of 2 babies because she was paralyzed. The month after White and I married, she had a stroke, and I had to, my brother and his wife moved in with her to take care of her because we were living in the house with Miss McIntosh, and there wasn't any way in the world I could take her. So Hoss, my brother, didn't have a job then, so I went on working at the factory to pay all of their bills and to take care of her. And then in that next summer, after we had moved into this little house, got it sort of livable, he was called to Philippi to run the cotton gin over there, and she got to move with us and live with us, and we had a wonderful time. I taught her how to walk again with a straight chair, and then when we moved back, well, she was ready to move in with us, and she lived with me 5 years before she died. And then the next year, I got pregnant, and she died in June of 53, and then I got pregnant in 54, and Rhett was born in 55. And when he was 11 years old, as I had said, I always had this burning desire to have something, to have a home that I didn't have to be ashamed of, and to have a better life than I had ever had. So when he was 11 years old, I started college to study interior designing, and from then on, it was just sort of like a snowball rolling down a hill. It was just like, that's what God told me to do, and it happened just like I had wanted it to.
I remember when we first started visiting with you, I was really impressed with the way that you could do something out of nothing. Your brain just worked 24 hours a day, sometimes 28 hours a day, huh?
That's possible.
And in your fireplace in the living room, you had taken a piece of cardboard and had cut it in the shape of a fan, and then had folded it back and forth, where it looked like a fan. You remember that? How did you do that?
And painted it gold.
And you painted it gold. And it was sitting in that fireplace, and it looked just like a brass fan.
Mm-hmm. Then in 1968, then our house was selected best decorated farm home in the county, and that I had done everything to it. Like finishing the floors, painting the walls, painting the house outside, making the curtains, and braiding the rugs and all that. So the family test group of Farm Journal talked to the editor, and she came down to interview me, and she wanted to do a story to tell other farm people, young farmers, that they didn't have to spend a lot of money to have a livable home. And the day that they came to interview me, I had lunch for them that day, and while we were eating lunch, the girl from the family test group was telling her about my widow women. and that I had 6 widow women in the community that I took care of. So she asked me, when she got back to her office in Philadelphia, she wrote and asked me to do a feature story on me. And the title of the story was Make People Your Hobby.
Now tell me what you say that you took care of them. Now when your grandchildren are listening to this, they won't know what you mean when you say you took care of these widow women. What did you do for them?
Well, I saw that they each had a way to go to the doctor, to the grocery store, or shopping, or whatever they needed, and I would cook. I'd always make soup and take them some of it, and then they would do things for me.
What'd they do for you?
Oh, gosh, they would babysit, and one of them baked bread, and one of them taught me how to arrange flowers, and I just learned a lot from them in general. You can learn so much from older people that have had so much experience in life, and I just always tried to make older people my hobby. Because my mother was a widow, and if you've ever been an elderly widow lady and you don't have a lot of family, or a family that's able to take care of you, people don't really want to do anything and charge a widow woman for it, and they don't want to do it for nothing, so consequently a lot of widow women get left out.
Yeah, they do.
And I vowed that if I ever got grown and had a home and a way to do things, that I would not ever forget that. And I hope that I haven't. Those widow women have long since died, but there's always someone else to take their place.
Well, I'm going to brag on you a little bit here, and I think that this is perhaps when you really did learn that you can't outgive anybody else.
No.
And the only way you can really be happy and to really prosper in life, and when I say prosper, I don't mean necessarily material possessions, although you have been prosperous there too, but I think you learned really early in life that the more that you do for others, the more it comes back to you. Because I've been down here a lot of times when you would be doing things for other people. In fact, when, and we'll go back, but I guess we have to kind of say these things while we're thinking about them, don't we, Barry? Because this is new to both of us. With this interviewing stuff is new, and I know it's kind of scary to Mary to try to think up things to say to you that will be of interest to you, and yet not be boring, and yet not leave anything out. It's just kind of a new experience, so excuse all the blunders, right, Mary?
Yeah, that's right.
But I know one time we came down here, Herb and I came, and we were going to take White and Mary home with us. We live in Florida, and we were going to take them home with us. The only way we could get them to come, because White would not fly on an airplane, and they didn't feel like driving. So we said, okay, we'll just come and get you, and then we'll bring you back home. So we came down here, and what do you think she was doing the night that we got here? Now, mind you, we were going to leave the very next morning. And when we got here, I have never seen as much food being cooked on a stove in my life. She had the deepest pots of beans and corn and potatoes, and I don't know what all you had, Mary.
I don't even
You
remember.
don't even remember what I'm talking about, do you?
Not the slightest.
Okay, Margaret's husband. Sweet, was it Sweet that was sick? Who was it that was Sweet? Sweet?
Sweet's wife,
Sweet, no, it was a man that was sick here in the community that had been somehow associated with your family. He lived by himself. He was getting old, and he had been sick, and you could...
Mr. Jim Woody, I guess.
I thought it was I thought it was somebody that used to take care of Margaret, or used to be married to her. He lived in a little house, and you had cooked all this food, and he was not well, and you had been doing things for him, and you were worried about him, that we were going to be gone 2 weeks.
I don't remember.
Who was it that just died, and his daughter's name Sue?
That was Sweet, but
that was Sweet.
No.
And
well, it may have been, I don't know.
And you had cooked all this food, and here she hadn't even packed to go to our house, but she was thinking of somebody else. Her priority that night was not to get her clothes together and get everything ready so she could have a good night's sleep and be rested before she took that 1,000-mile trip with us. But her thought was to take care of Sweet, because he had been good to her. And so she took all of this food. I went with you. And we took all of this food over there, and he just cried because he didn't know what he was going to do either with you gone. And she explained to him about how to take care of the food so that it wouldn't spoil, and to heat just what he wanted to eat for each meal. And I tell you what, that really impressed me. And Mary has always been thinking of other people before she thinks of herself. And God's really blessed her for that. And so Rhett was a cute little fella. I knew him, like I said, in 1960. And he called my husband Brother Willie. And it was really something. But what she just said, she did learn a whole lot from older people. And one of the things she'd mentioned learning from older people was the lady you learned to do flower arranging from.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you doing with that now?
Well, I'm working at it about 18 hours a day some days. But it's something that I love to do. But I went on to work. I started out in 1968 professionally. And there were a lot of days I'd love to just throw up my hands and quit. I thought, well, I'd just soon be chopping cotton as this. But I didn't give up then. And persevered, and perseverance will pay off. I'm here to tell you that it does.
How far did you have to drive to go to school?
I drove from here to Martin, and then I went to Memphis 4 years.
How far is that?
100 miles.
100 miles. So you drove 100 miles there and 100 miles back to study. And I remember one time when you first started in this, you said that people were constantly coming to you and asking your opinion about things.
Yeah, before
right? Before
decided
you
to do it
started in
professionally,
this.
yeah.
But they were asking you your opinion, and it seems to me like I remember one time you thought, well, if you were going to be giving away all this advice, maybe you should just study and learn how to do it right and charge for it.
And I've been at it 28 years now.
Can't slow down, can you?
Don't want to. I love what I'm doing.
Well, and you've helped some other aspiring designers
when
too.
When I started in this business, I promised God if I could make it, that I would never turn down an opportunity to help someone else. So I don't know how the university found out about me, but anyhow, the interior design students at the University of Tennessee do their internship under me for 6 weeks out of the year. And I've had them from Lambeth and from Oxford.
Oxford in England?
Oxford, Mississippi.
Oxford, okay.
And I've had a lot of beautiful letters from all of my students. Some of them have gone on to have careers of their own and have done well. Some of them decided the hard work is not worth it and they drop out. But for the ones who have made it, I'm extremely proud of them.
Some of your grandchildren are too young to remember when you had a bout with cancer. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, in 1980, we didn't even have any grandchildren, and because Melanie, I remember her sitting outside the door because I had been to the hospital in Union City and had some female work done, and I thought I was all right. I was working on a 3-story office building up there, and about the second day, I just left the hospital and went on to work over there, and the next day, and then the next day I was getting ready to go to work, and the phone rang, and it was the doctor, and he said he wanted me to come in. He wanted to talk to me, and I knew in a minute, and I didn't even have to think twice what it was. I said, yeah, he's found cancer. And sure enough, going up there, I asked God not to take it away from me, but to help me accept it, and he did. And of course, when he told me for sure what it was, I cried a little while.
I imagine.
And he made me watch a film, and I couldn't tell you a thing that was on that film that I had to watch. But anyhow, I came home, and I called White and Rhett and told them, and by 5 o'clock that afternoon, you couldn't stir the people in this house with a stick. And one of them was one of my customers over at Tiptonville, Mrs. Can't even think of her name right just a minute. But anyway, she came over, and they had told me that I'd have to wear a radiation implant inside to shrink the malignancy so it would not spread when they operated.
This was cancer of the uterus, right?
Mm-hmm. And I went to Memphis then. She insisted that I go, and she went with my daughter-in-law to take me. And he confirmed that it was endometrial cancer, and they were going to do a radiation implant the next morning. And I said something to him about this little knot between my breasts. I said, it feels like a pea running around under the skin. I just push it around. And he said, well, that doesn't sound good. So he took a needle to see if he could draw something out, and he couldn't. And he said, in the morning when I do the radiation implant, I'll have to take a biopsy of that. And he said, if that's cancer, And he said, I'm afraid it is. He said, the breast will have to come off. So when I came to the next morning, it was gone. And the friend of mine that I had grown up with in Glass was standing over me. And of course, when I felt up there to see if my breast was gone, and it was, I started to cry. And she said, no, we're not having any of that blubbering down here. Of course, she was about to cry herself. And, but anyway, Dr. Jabur came in the next morning and told me, he said, when you can, I want you to start trying to raise your arm up, because they had removed 13 lymph glands, and he knew that it was going to be rough. And he said, when you can, I want you to start trying just a little bit at a time. I said, the one I've been brushing my hair with. And he said, to my knowledge, no one has ever done that. I said, well, if I hadn't had to work on the dad blame hemovac all night to make the breast drain, I probably couldn't have either.
What do you mean a hemovac?
It was it looked like a round disc. It was a suction cup, really, where the breast would drain, because they had taken the breast off all the way down to the rib cage, and then had to take out 13 lymph glands. But I was back at work about 10 days after they removed the breast. And people were so good to me and so interested. When I came home from the hospital, food was everywhere that they had brought in. I thought they thought I was going to die. But I never did have any problem. I've never had any pain with it. It was just wonderful. And I know, I always felt like that if I complained or got down in the mouth, that people would think I didn't appreciate all that they did. So I just kept a positive attitude, and that was the salvation of it, I guess, because I never did feel bad from it, never did have any pain. Then a year to the day after I had that breast taken off, well, 6 weeks later after they took the breast off, I had the hysterectomy.
Oh, so you had that.
And then I was back at work for 3 weeks after that. And
I remember one time down here, and you would go by and take a cobalt treatment and then go on to work.
I took 28 cobalt treatments. And then one of the pink ladies at the hospital asked me permission to do a story. Said, when you come out, you're just radiant. And she said it might inspire other Farm Journal readers. I mean, other people who had cancer. That had cancer. But I know 2 or 3 people had called me after they had read the story in the paper and said it did help them, you know, to always have a positive attitude. And then they did an implant a year from that. A year to the day I went back for an implant, reconstructive surgery. And they did that on Tuesday, and then on Thursday I had asked the plastic surgeon if he could do a facelift at the same time, and he said, well, can you handle all that at one time? I said, well, certainly. And they did the facelift on Thursday, and then came in Friday morning and told me there was cancer in the other breast, and they took it off and did an implant then. So that was all in a matter of a week. It was really considered sort of major surgery 3 times in a week.
Well, I imagine it was major surgery.
But I still didn't have any problems with it. And they did I always had a receding chin line, and that's what I wanted taken care of. And he did a silicone implant on the front of my chin and pulled a double chin out. And,
great job.
And
great job.
Then I guess, and I went back, you know, for checkups all the time. So that was in 1980, and this is 96, and I've never had.
You're still going strong, aren't you?
Just as hard as I can go, just like a wild Indian.
Can't keep a good woman down, and Mary sure must be a good woman, because she never goes down, I tell you. She might go down for a little while. She's human like the rest of us, but she bounces right back up, and I tell you what, that's really something.
Then everything went along pretty well until 3 years ago when I lost Wyatt. He had a kidney removed that was malignant, and then this whatever happened to him, we think it happened from he thought it was a pull muscle in his back, but it was the cancer that had come back, and he was in so much pain when we took him to the hospital. He was just burning up all over, and they put him in a room, and he wanted the air conditioner just as high as it would go with no cover on, and he took pneumonia, and he only lived for just a few days after that.
Was he diabetic? Did he
No.
go into diabetic coma? I kind of thought that.
No, he was in so much pain that the pain caused his blood sugar to go up and his blood pressure, and they put him in the hospital to try to find out what was wrong. And then after he died, they decided that it was the
Was
cancer
this
had
the
come back.
cancer that came back from the time that he was in Memphis?
Mhm.
And you said that he was in such pain he was wishing he could just jump out the window.
Mhm.
And they had to just hold him down, didn't
I
you?
held him on the bed one night, all night
He was
long,
just
with brute
about to
strength.
die with pain. And they couldn't give him anything
Well,
for
they
the
had
pain,
given him
could
so
they?
much, it had he had a reaction to it.
Reaction from it, yeah.
But he never could take a narcotic painkiller.
How long were y'all married?
48 years.
48. You married in 47?
47.
Well, and it'll be 2 years this,
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah, 3 years, the 1st of September. And then
And
right
then-
after he was buried, I was coming home from work one day, and the girl that works with me was driving, and we had stopped for a school bus to let some children off. And this 14-year-old boy rounded a corner in a truck with his little brother in there with him, and never did slow up and rammed our back. And it knocked us 60 feet, tore my van up, and injured my shoulder, and I had to quit doing windows in the decorating field. And I had a bruised lung from that, and then that was in November, and then in January my nephew did another facelift. That had already been scheduled long before White died even. So I went ahead and did that, and I guess that's really as up to date as I can get. I'm still working every day and love every minute of it, and it gives me an income and a chance to be with and meet people and to help people and to tell them the story that I hope in some way could help them, and try to keep people who are ill or just down on everything, trying to get them to keep a positive attitude.
I don't know how busy, I know how busy you are sometimes, but I never have seen you so busy but what you could quit and help somebody if they needed help.
Well, that's the greatest joy that I have, is being available to people who need help.
If you have advice to give to your grandchildren, what would it be, and how many grandchildren do you have?
Well, I have 3 beautiful grandchildren.
And what are their
wonderful-
names and how old are they?
I have a grandson that is 12, and he will be 13 in December the
Yes.
24th.
And that's Jason.
Justin.
Justin, I mean.
And then Mary Helen, it will be 8 in October, and Lynn will be 5 in October. And they are just the most precious things in the world. And I just want them to be good, sweet children, and to love life and love people, and always be as sweet and good and pure as they are now.
That sounds good to me. Herb, you want to add anything? You're the cameraman over there.
Not that I know of anything else.
Ray,
You
anything
didn't say
else you
anything
need?
about sugar, but
Oh yeah, I am a diabetic
Yeah.
now. I've acquired that too, with a few other things.
Well, she's sweet enough to be a diabetic, I know.
But
Well.
so far it hasn't presented any problem. I know I don't stay on my diet as well as I should, but I will.
One of these days you will.
I will.
That
Well, I'm
sounds good to me.
pretty careful, most of the time.
Well, you don't want to say anything else. I guess you can tell them goodbye. It's so long.
Well.
It's been nice talking with them, and hope they enjoy it. And when they're about
Well,
50
I think
years old.
I would just like for the grandchildren, to know how that it doesn't always take a college education to be successful, but it sure would have helped a lot of times along the way if I had. But hard work and perseverance, and to love the Lord.
Yeah. You've always trusted in God that
Sure
things are
have.
going to be right, and I think nobody can receive any better advice than that. So we'll give you
Just-
one.
And I just want to know I love them.
Just you love them, and we love Mary. So I guess this is it.
Okay.
I was waiting for it to go to 9:45, but it wouldn't go there.
Oh, okay.